Hi guys, and welcome to the Stephen King Cemetery Club. Hi guys, we are discussing The Body today, which is the fall season from different seasons. So this is Fall from Innocence, The Body. It takes place in Castle Rock in 1960. So already we've had a lot of Castle Rock references, and I can go into this more in a separate video, but of the Stephen King created towns, I think Castle Rock is my least favorite. I like Jerusalem's Lot better, and I like Derry better. But anyway, this story has four main characters, four boys. There's Gordy, who is narrating, and he is kind of the stand-in for Stephen King. I really think that he is an example of what Stephen King was and what he became. And then we have Chris, Teddy, and Vern. They all hang out in a clubhouse. They are best friends. None of them has a great home life. The kids in the story are not exactly like the ones in It. They're not as likable, and I mean, given that it's a novella, there's not much chance for a character development arc that would make me like them as much as I like the kids from It, but they are serviceable. I really do like the relationship between Gordy and Chris. The two of them have a bond, I think, that is much greater than the bond between the other boys. Vern comes over and he asks if they want to see a dead body. And they make this elaborate plan to pretend to camp out in their yard, and the parents will all think that they're sleeping in this tent, and they are going to hike miles, like 10 to 16 miles, into the woods and see this dead body. Vern has overheard his brother and his brother's friend talking about how they discovered the body of a child that went missing. It was a boy about their age, and he was going berry picking. He got lost, and no one has found him. They've done manhunts for him. They have not located his body. And the boys were up to no good. They stole a car, and they ended up finding this body, and they couldn't report it because they had stolen the car. There would be questions asked, all this stuff. So they are discussing it between themselves, and Vern overhears them. That's how he gets the idea to go and tell his friends, hey, I know where there's a dead body. Do you want to come see it? And of course, they all want to go see it. And throughout the course of this novella, I ask myself, would I want to see that? And the answer is no. I don't want to see a dead body. I want to read about it, but I don't want to see it. I don't want to actually experience it. Same with like ghost things, they're fun to read about, but I don't want that stuff happening to me in real life. The kid who went missing and whose body is out in the wilderness is Ray Brower. The four boys take off. They set up their tent. They put a flashlight in there to trick everyone, but really none of their parents are very present in their lives, and they don't really seem to care what happens to them. So it's not as though anyone's going to pick apart their story. Quote, all we could think about was that kid Brower, hit by a train, and how we were going to see him, or what was left of him. Page 317. So they set off on their journey, and they are going to follow the train tracks, because that's where the kid died. He got hit by the train and fell into an embankment, and that's where the older boys found him. They get some supplies, they start off on their journey, they go through the town dump, they get chased. It's a very tight bonding, this whole thing is a very big bonding experience for these boys. And they get to the train trestle. It's very dangerous because once you are out on the middle of this train trestle, and the way I always picture it is the train tracks from The Fox and the Hound. And, you're out there over the river. There's nowhere to go. You can't drop down. You can't hold on. Even one of the kids says, hey, if a train comes, we'll just hang by the ties underneath. But it's like, you can't hold on for that long. the train is going to be shaking the bridge like crazy. You will not be able to survive. You just won't. Quote, "The embankment dropped away beneath me, and every step further out seemed to seal our decision more firmly and to make it feel more suicidally stupid." Pages 368 to 369. They all make their way out onto the train trestle, which is also reminiscent of the gunslinger, with Jake and Roland. And two of them have kind of neared the other side. Gordon is last, and he is just in the center. He's starting to get disoriented. Like, he's looking at the ties, and they're starting to float between... He's seeing things that aren't there, he's seeing ties that aren't there, and he's seeing gaps that aren't there. So it's kind of like, after a while, when things become meaningless to your brain, it's kind of that, where he's starting to hallucinate and he needs to take a pause, and he's looking up at the sky to kind of clear his vision. And he feels the train track vibrating. There's a train coming. Of all times for a train to come. They had already had a train pass by them earlier, so they weren't really expecting there to be a train. But, of course, when there's no place to go, that would be when the train comes. So they start booking it, which is even more dangerous, to be running across this thing where you could trip, your leg go through the slats, and you could break something, you could get stuck, you could fall through if there's a soft spot. There's just numerous ways that you could die or hurt yourself. But eventually, they all get off the train trestle, and they all make it kind of last minute. You know, you actually have two of the boys at the end diving off of the trestle and onto the ground. They get to a place where they're going to camp for the night, and the boys fall asleep, and Gordy, he wakes up in the middle of the night, and everyone is crowding around him, and he's disoriented. He doesn't know what's happening because he was sleeping, and everyone is terrified. Chris is a little less terrified. He's just kind of looking off and being very alert. But the other two, Teddy and Vern, are like clinging to him. They are really scared. Quote, "The scream climbed with a crazy ease through octave after octave, finally reaching a glassy, freezing edge. It hung there for a moment, and then whirled back down again, disappearing into an impossible bass register that buzzed like a monstrous honeybee. This was followed by a burst of what sounded like mad laughter, and then there was silence again." Page 401. So the boys are kind of thinking it's a ghost. Maybe not. It does seem a lot like what happens in Pet Sematary when Lewis ends up going beyond into the Micmac burial ground area, where there's crazy laughter, there are crazy things that happen in the woods that are not explained. They are not loons, they are not mountain lions, they are weird spirits and stuff like that. So that part of the story is the most chilling and probably my favorite part of the novella. And then they decide to stay up and take watch. Each one is going to have a shift because they're too scared to go to sleep without, someone watching. So they go through the line, and Gordy is the last one. He wakes up and he's watching and nothing happens, but then it starts getting light out and he takes that time to contemplate things and to just absorb all the beauty and the stillness, and he goes through this whole passage with a beautiful moment where he sees a deer, and he says that it's something that was special to him, and he has not told anyone about it until he tells us. When he writes it down and he tells us, he shares it with us, that's the first time he's mentioned it, because it kind of would cheapen it to tell people. Quote, "The most important things are the hardest to say because words diminish them. It's hard to make strangers care about the good things in your life." Page 406. And I find that to be so true. Like, the happiness that you feel, it's hard to convey to someone else. The way that just a certain shift of the light can make you feel something, but you can't explain it, or you can't make someone understand it. It's just, it's the way of things. The boys press on that morning. It's very hot, sticky, there are bugs everywhere. It's not a pleasant experience. They've run out of food, and they're kind of grumpy. They go into a pond and get covered with leeches, and that's quite a gross experience. And they finally see the body just as there's a storm rolling in. Quote, and sticking out of a wild clock spring of blackberry brambles was a single pale white hand. Page 419. Unbeknownst to our four boys, the older boys have all decided to come down and claim the body themselves. So both sides claim dibs on this body, and the whole time I'm thinking, no one should have this body. No one should be doing anything other than telling the authorities so that the body can be taken out properly and, they can decide if there was foul play. They need to preserve the crime scene. The boys have already turned the kid over and looked at him and his corpse, and it's very poignant and stuff, but the whole time I'm thinking, don't touch it. So Chris actually gets his gun out and he makes all the boys, the older boys, back off, even though there's a ton of them. They outnumber the younger boys by quite a bit. And so the younger boys win, the older boys leave, and they promise payback. They promise they're going to beat the shit out of these younger boys. The boys don't take the body. They leave it. They're afraid that they will get in trouble or that someone will think that they actually murdered the kid, so they leave the body there. Someone calls in an anonymous tip from the Ace Merrill gang. That's the gang that Chris's brother, Vern's brother, Ace Merrill, a couple other boys, someone from there calls it in. And the boys head back. They have had their bonding experience. They saw the body. They eventually get home and no one even figures it out. None of the adults figure it out. But the older boys from the gang, they end up exacting their revenge on each of the four boys at different times. And they beat them hardcore. They really do a number on them. Gordy, Chris, Vern, and Teddy, they all eventually drift apart. They're no longer friends. They just kind of naturally disassociate. Chris and Gordy remain friends longer. And then they all die early deaths except for Gordy. And it's really sad because Chris wanted to better himself. He wanted to escape the life that he was kind of destined to live in this small town with shitty parents, shitty brother, all working the same dead-end job, that kind of thing. No expectation for his performance in school. He decided that he was going to make something of himself for himself, and he studied really hard. He got Gordy to help him, and they ended up achieving a lot. Chris had so much riding against him that he actually overcame great odds. He was in pre-law when he got killed. Someone murdered him because he was trying to break up a fight. And Ace Merrill, the head of the gang, the other gang, he outlived them. He's still around and he is living the life that Chris tried so hard to escape. I like that little synchronicity at the end where Ace is basically what Chris would have become if Chris hadn't pulled himself out. And Gordy, like I said, is kind of a stand-in for Stephen King. He's a writer, he has a wife and kids, and he writes scary stuff like Stephen King. And, he also escaped that life of the small town with the mill work. And it's a good read. It's kind of depressing. It is good. I like it. I like it quite a bit, but I just don't have as much affinity for these boys as I do for the kids in it. Have a spooky day.